Hi guys, it's Miss Prince. I'm in the library and I wanted to share a quick story with you today. I can't bring you guys here to read it to you, so I figured I'd record it. You can watch it in your classroom. The story I'm doing is how many seeds are in a pumpkin. And I'm going to put that on my book cart. So when I come to your classroom, if it's available, you could feel free to check this out to bring home. So without further ado, I'll read you the book. Charlie liked school. He liked his teacher, Mr. Tiffin. He liked his best friend, Alex. But he did not like lining up to go into school. Mr. Tiffin's class lined up by size, tallest to shortest. Charlie was the smallest in the class. Every time. One chilly fall morning, Charlie was surprised to see 3 bright orange pumpkins on Mr. Tiffin's desk. One pumpkin was big, one was medium, and one was small. How many seeds are in the pumpkin, Mr. Tiffin? Does anybody know? Nobody knew, but everybody had an idea. The biggest one has the most, said Robert. I bet it has 1,000,000 seeds. Robert was the tallest boy in the class. The medium one has 500, Eleanor said. Eleanor always sounded as if she knew exactly what she was talking about. The tiny one has 22, says Anna. Anna liked even numbers better than odd ones. Mr. Tiffin wrote down all the guesses on the blackboard. We use whiteboards now. Charlie was very quiet. What are you thinking, Charlie? Asked Mr. Tiffin. I'm thinking that all the best guesses are taken, Charlie said. Why don't we open these pumpkins up and see, said Mr. Tiffin. The next day, the kids in Mr. Tiffin's class brought in spoons for scooping out and bowls for holding and plastic bags for throwing out. They covered the floor with newspaper. They put on their smocks. It's a messy business counting pumpkin seeds, said Mr. Tiffin, but the class was ready. After Mr. Tiffin cut a circle around each pumpkin stem, Kimmy, Alex, and Jake pulled off the caps. The children peered inside. The big one definitely has the most, said Robert. We'll see, said Mr. Tiffin. The pumpkin's pulp was slimy and stringy, and seeds were hard to get out. If you can't picture what that feels like, maybe you should crack open a pumpkin this month and see what it feels like for your own self. When the children were finished, there were 3 empty pumpkins, 3 full bowls, and 20 messy hands. Tomorrow we'll find out the answer to the question, said Mr. Tiffin. Tonight your homework is to think about how we should count all those seeds. That afternoon, Mr. Tiffin dried the seeds. The next day he put them in 3 paper bags, each marked big, medium, small. Did you do your thinking homework? He asked the class. Yes, said Alex. I think we should just guess. I think we should count very, very carefully, said Tara. I think we should count by 2s, 5s, and 10s, said Molly. The class agreed that Molly had a great idea. Robert, Kimmy, and Jake all wanted to count the seeds of the big pumpkin by 2s. Anna asked if she could join them. We can be the 2s club, she said. They practiced counting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, they smiled together. Jeremy, Tara, Eleanor, and Molly and Alex liked counting by 5s. We'll count the seeds in the medium pumpkin, said Molly. We can be the 5s club. 5, 10, 15, 20, they cheered. I'll take the smallest pumpkin, said Charlie. I guess I'll be the 10s club. Good idea, said Mr. Tiffin. 10, 20, 30, Charlie began. Soon there were many groups of seeds in front of each pumpkin. Holy moly moo. That is a lot of seeds. The 2s club. See, said Robert, the 2s club has the most. They had 170 pairs of seeds. The 5s club. We have lots too, said Eleanor. They had 63 groups of 5 seeds and 1 seed left over. You see that one little seed left over? The Tens Club. Charlie had exactly 35 groups of 10 seeds. Who has the most? I think we need to keep reading to figure this out because I think there's a little bit of math involved. Robert looked at the seeds in front of Charlie. You don't have a whole lot, he said. Let's get counting, said Mr. Tiffin. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, began Robert, Kimmy, Jake, and Anna. It took a long time to count 170 pairs of seeds. My brain hurts, said Anna. The biggest pumpkin had 340 seeds. Almost 1,000,000, said Jake. The 5s were a little easier. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, chanted Jeremy, Tara, Eleanor, and Molly. There were 316 seeds in the medium pumpkin. Too bad for you, said Robert. It's not a contest, said Molly. The tens were the fastest of all since there were just 35 groups. 10, 20, 30, 40. Charlie counted to himself. This can't be right, he said. What can't be right, said Mr. Tiffin. There are 350 seeds in my little pumpkin, said Charlie. That means I have the most of all. So it does, said Mr. Tiffin. Congratulations, Charlie, said Alex. The 10 Club wins. It's not a contest, said Robert. He thought it was a contest the whole time. He's changing his story now that he's not in the highest number, isn't he? Mr. Tiffin told the class to gather around. You can never tell just how many seeds are in pumpkins until you open them up, he said. But there may be some clues. Take a good look at these. Boys and girls, I read this story earlier and I now know the clues. I didn't know them until I read this book. So let's see if you might have known before. Charlie's is darker orange, said Anna. And it has more lines on the outside, said Robert. Yes, said Mr. Tiffin. For each line on the outside, there's a row of seeds on the inside. And the longer the pumpkin grows, so for the longest amount of time, the more lines it gets, he added. Its skin gets darker too. So even though my pumpkin was the smallest, it was on the vine the longest, said Charlie. Exactly, said Mr. Tiffin. I think we're kind of guilty of thinking the bigger the pumpkin is, the longer it's growing, but that's not the case with pumpkins. When it was time to go home, the class lined up by the door. Smallest to tallest this time, said Mr. Tiffin. Robert was at the back. Eleanor was in the middle. Charlie was finally at the front. Small things can have a lot going on inside of them, Charlie said to Mr. Tiffin. And then they left the classroom with Charlie leading the way. And now, guys, Charlie wrote pumpkin facts at the end of the book. I'm going to take a close-up picture of that and put that on my website so you can see that underneath this link. I hope you liked this book. Again, that's the name, and it says How Many Seeds in a Pumpkin, and it was by Margaret McNamara and Brian Karras, I believe is how he pronounces his name. So thanks for coming to visit the library for just a quick virtual story. See you around.